I think humility, courage, and vulnerability is the triad of transformation. I don't think real transformation can happen without those three. Even you mentioning some of the challenges that your wife went through with her dark time and you being there for her, I know that she rose anew from that. And a lot of these CEOs and people that are really successful, millionaires, billionaires that I've met, mentors, coaches, I've had dozens, some of them are successful through smoke and mirrors and not real courage, humility, and vulnerability. Like why is it that you are so 10 out of 10 confident, but yet you've never exercised? Why is it that you are so 10 out of 10 confident, but yet your wife divorced you because you seem to never listen to her at all? You want to know the truth about a great leader?
Let me invite you to sit back, drop your jaw, tongue, and shoulders, take a deep breath, and if you wish, close your eyes for a moment and feel the beat within. In a few seconds, you just jumped from your head to your heart and felt the beat within, opening up to receive even more value and fulfillment out of your business and life and today's episode. I'm your host, Nico van der Venne, confidant to successful CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs striving to achieve everlasting fulfillment. Welcome to the Everlasting Fulfillment podcast with our next guest, Alan Lazaros. At age 2, his father passed away in a car accident. At age 26, after getting into a nearly fatal car accident himself, Alan questioned everything he was doing in his life. He questioned who he was and the choices he was making. He was at an all-time low and decided to change his trajectory forever. Although he had a successful career in corporate America, he made the hard decision to start his own business, dedicated to helping others get to the next level in their life, love, health, and wealth. He's also the CEO of the Next Level University podcast, with his co-host Kevin Palmieri, who I interviewed a while back. A global top 100 podcast with 1,700 episodes. And I'm going to say wow right there. Listened to in 170 plus countries. Man, Alan, welcome to the show, and thank you very much to get some little time out of your schedule. Man, you must be so freaking busy. Wow, thank you very much.
Two things. One, thank you. I do not take it lightly speaking into the lives of other people. I really appreciate the opening regarding the setting into your heart. I think that, to your point, I am very busy. But I also am grateful for that because I remember at the beginning when it was crickets.
Mm-hmm.
And I always try to remind myself, because supply and demand, right? There was a lot of supply back in the day and no demand. And so now there's a lot of demand. So thank you for having me. I don't take it lightly. 9 years ago, I started listening to podcasts, and they really helped me reorient toward a more positive trajectory in my life. And now I used to think these people are so articulate and they had it all figured out. Now I realize, and met many of them, and they don't have it all figured out. And now I sound like one of those guys. So I will make it very, very clear that I don't have it all figured out, but I definitely have more figured out than I did back then. And I think that that's a really cool duality. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. You and I have already had a blast behind the scenes. Yes. And I also need to say this. Every time I read your name, I think of delicious roasted chicken because my favorite chicken restaurant is called Nico's. So I have to share that with your listeners.
Like I said, because
that's how we first met right there. That's how I knew this was going to be great.
Yeah, my kids always, cringe when I do that because we have this little green place in the back and there's like 4 or 5 chickens there. And one of them used to be our chicken. So she kind of migrated into the garden of one of our neighbors because we were doing some remodeling and stuff like that. And now every time we talk about the chickens, of course, what does Dad do? Because, and everything goes on. So yeah.
Nice. Nice. That wasn't your first time. I thought that was just for me.
No, it wasn't. Sorry. You were not de-virginized from the because.
No worries. No worries. I'm grateful that you're willing to be playful because that tells me this interview will be very authentic.
Oh yeah, I don't like the other kind, not the scripted stories. I do have some questions that I kind of swivel around because, of course, the goal of the podcast is to inspire. And talking about inspiration, you're talking about 9 years, 9 years. So let's go back 9 years, if you would. And could you find the place that you were, or the situation you were in, that might have triggered you to change course? Except for, of course, the accident is one of the things I want to talk to you about, if you're open to it. But is there anything else that triggered at the same time?
So to provide context, you're talking about a car accident that I got in when I was 26, which was 9 years ago. I often joke and say I'm hoping to hit puberty at 36. So I'm 35 now. I look 12, and that very much helps me in my business coaching career. No, it definitely doesn't. But 9 years ago, I got in a car accident that physically I was okay. It was my fault. And my father passed away in a car accident when I was 2 years old, when he was 28 years old. And so I was 26 at the time, and that was my metaphorical quarter-life crisis. Phoenix burned down, rise from the ashes moment. And the quickest way I can describe it is I was very professionally developed and achievement-oriented, resume, cover letter, computer engineering degree, master's in business administration, successful in corporate, 1% global earner in my early 20s, tons of money in an investment account at Vanguard, that kind of thing, paid off all my student loans. I was successful and deeply unfulfilled, didn't realize it. And then after the car accident, I really woke up to that, to your point. And then I went all the way past broke, and I became very fulfilled inside me, but broke and unsuccessful. So I playfully joke, I've been very successful and unfulfilled, which sucks. And then I've also been really fulfilled and unsuccessful, which kind of also sucks, to be completely honest. And so now 9 years later, I'm very grateful to be what I would refer to as both fulfilled and successful. And now I want my life to be a more amplified version of what it already is. And if you can really say that, if you can say, I want my current life, the way it's designed now, I want my future to be an amplified version of what already is, I would say you are on the path. That's great. But to answer your question, there's a couple things that come to mind. There's actually a bunch. I mean, Tony Robbins' TED Talk for me was the first. It's called Why We Do What We Do. And regardless of what you think of Tony, because a lot of people love him, a lot of people don't, I don't care. The point is the TED Talk itself is magnificent. Mm-hmm. And it's the most valuable TED Talk in existence, in my opinion. And it really woke me up to my calling. And my calling is, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why are other people doing what they're doing? What is my motive for action? What is explore the inside as well as the outside? Because I playfully joked with you off air. I said I was the STEMBIF guy. So I call it STEMBIF: science, technology, engineering, mathematics, business, and finance. So I think all of us fall on one end of a pendulum in pretty much everything. You can also think of it statistically as a bell curve. So for everyone watching or listening, I need to give a disclaimer. I think in numbers and statistics and mathematics and probabilities and logic and rationality. I'm hyper rational. When I was a little kid, I used to think everyone was irrational and lazy. I now realize I'm hyper rational and hardworking, even though that's hard to give myself. So for everyone listening, please don't shut off just because I think in a different modality than you do. I do think that numbers, rationality, statistics, probabilities are the rarest modality of thinking. I think there's 4. But for me, everything's a bell curve. Everything's exponential curves and mathematics. So my point of all that is, I think we're all on one end of a spectrum. We're all on one end of a bell curve in everything. So if you picture all the basketball players in the world, there's one LeBron James and there's one person who can't even get on the court because they have some ailment, that kind of idea. And so the idea here is all of us fall on one end of this pendulum, in my opinion. You are either good at success or good at relationships. It's very hard to be good at both. You are either professionally developed or personally developed. It's very hard to be good at both. You are either IQ or EQ. It's very hard to be good at both. We all are righty or lefty, and it's very hard to be ambidextrous. And I've come to find over coaching so many people, I have 26 people on my roster. My youngest is 16. My oldest is 63. My youngest is brand new to business. The 63-year-old has been in business for decades, and I've got everything in between, male, female, all different countries, all different backgrounds, all different ethnicities, all different cultures, all different spiritual beliefs, the whole bag. And I've had hundreds of clients over the last 7 years, probably 100 plus, not hundreds, 100 plus. And you just realize, oh, okay, so the advice for one client is actually wildly detrimental to the advice for another, because the principles remain the same, but the way you apply those principles are completely different based on which end of the pendulum you swing on. If you're righty, you need to practice with your left. If you're lefty, you need to practice with your right. And so you're either good at success and achievement, or you're good at relationships. Very few people are good at both. And unfortunately, to be successful, you need to also be good at relationships. And if you're in relationships and have a wonderful family life and you're holistic and emotionally intelligent, you also need some hard skills in the 21st century economy. And so I try really hard to help people become ambidextrous. And Tony Robbins' TED Talk is, I think, the way to do that, this understanding of who you are first. And that's really what it was, is that was the awakening to me, is personal development needs to be where you start. That way the external success is a byproduct of who you actually are, not who you want to be or who you think you should be based on your upbringing.
Okay. It's a very unique way of looking at the world from my perspective as well, what you're saying here. And like you say, it's not everybody looks at the world that way. And I understand what you mean, because I work with a lot of engineers. I used to be in IT for 15 years. And I ended my highest diploma is high school. And I went into the working force. And at some point, I have no idea how this works, but I always ended up in a leadership role. So people management was a natural given. On the other hand, I have a very good friend that works online, and it's a system that never failed me up to this point where there's a new friend of mine. And the first friend was Google. So I was in the technical area and I had a lot of things that I had to solve. So what did I do? I found information online on how to fix stuff. And I was very good at it, to find stuff, to fix stuff, and then explain it to other people in a human way. So, and then now with ChatGPT and all the AI stuff, I have another way of finding stuff and using it as a good tool to fix people's issues. And I see where you're talking about the pendulum. I think I'm trying to go to the middle with the tools that I find.
Yeah. Nice.
So it's I kind of love how you look at these things. And one of the things I wanted to mention is I also listen to the podcast, your podcast together with Kevin, and I know it's always so different how you two talk, because you do mention a lot of statistics and numbers and so on, and it's a beautiful dynamic between you two guys, because Kevin is very on the emotional side and speaks from the heart. You can hear that clearly. You also speak from the heart. I think I heard one of the last episodes was pretty emotional for you. And I was like, wow, these guys are, you feel the balance in the whole story together. And that's something that in a relationship, and that can be, bros amongst bros, or girls amongst girls, whatever, or sisters amongst sisters, let's keep it in the same trend, or husband and wife, or, partners together. There should be some kind of symbiosis in understanding what's going on. And I find it very interesting to know how. So I think did you already meet your current partner at the time when you had the accident?
No. As a matter of fact, Emilia is the greatest gift of my life. I say that because Kev will ask me on the podcast, and thank you for all those kind words about the show. I really appreciate it, because I do think that's the value of the show. Is we didn't know this at the time, but 7 years ago, Kevin and I had common core aspirations, we had common core values, and we also had a common core wound. We both didn't have fathers. We both had low self-worth. We both were definitely exposed to toxic masculinity from a very young age, and so we didn't want to be toxic. I want to be truthful, and I think that being hardcore and truthful is different than being toxic. And I think it's an energy thing. And I'm grateful that you feel like I speak from the heart, because I think a lot of people would maybe disagree with that. Since I'm a computer engineer, I don't know, maybe I've just evolved. But ultimately, I think the value of the show, but really the lesson underneath this, is what we call Drive to 5. You share your perspective. I share my perspective. I share why I see things the way I see them. You share why you see things the way you see them. And if we want to see the 360 degrees of this phone, I can only see the front, you can only see the back. And if you share what you see and I share what I see, now we all see better. And when you see better, you have an opportunity to make better choices. And I think, I worked in engineering, I worked in global product management, I worked in QA, I was on the road, I was inside sales, I did all the different, I was also a global product manager for a company called iRobot at another company called Sensata Technologies. And I often joke, if anyone's in product management, you have all the responsibility and none of the authority.
Okay.
So you basically have to kind of keep chameleon your way. I, talk to manufacturing in Mexico, and I talk to QA, and you talk to the marketing department and the branding, and then you've got the sales team, and then you also have to talk to the engineers. And so I was always this massive chameleon transcoder. And I realized later on that was actually, I kind of lost myself. It's cool to be ambidextrous. It's cool to be able to speak all those languages, so to speak. They're all in English in this case, but metaphorically. But I lost myself. I was everything for everyone and nothing for me. And so now I try really hard to sort of plant my flag, so to speak, on who I am, and then still expand who I am, and by learning from other people. And another thing that I'll share as well is when you do ask other people questions, if they are on the whole scarcity mindset of dominance hierarchies, a lot of times you leave looking like the student. That took me a long time to realize, because ultimately it's the student who becomes the master. And I've always been a curious student. But what I realize now is that when I leave a room having asked all the questions, I leave smarter, but everyone in that room thinks that other person is ahead of me. That was really hard for me to overcome in my 30s in particular, because I would realize I'd far surpassed many of my coaches and mentors in many regards, just holistic development. And I'd realize later on, why isn't this working? I don't get it. And now I understand that I'm very unique in the massive curiosity. I want to learn more from you than you want to learn from me on your show. You're here to interview me, and I'm going to ask you questions. I have to shut some of that down to ever be seen as an authority, because a lot of people who are younger and or less aware of this will fall for that dominance hierarchy stuff. So I don't know if I answered any questions there, but that's what came up for me.
Yeah, but it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Yeah, I think there's always a kind of dynamic in an organization where what you're saying, you're kind of the middleman somewhere, and in some parts of the organization you're one kind of middleman, and the other part you're not a kind of middleman. And there's either people that are on the floor doing the nitty gritty, turning the keys and stuff like that, and then you have people that out of a natural position or a natural attitude become the more dominant, because they are maybe a little bit stronger in their energy or in their understanding of the environment, or all the pieces that fix together. Because I understand that, and that this is coming from 25 years of enjoying the company of all kinds of people, is that from an engineering point or perspective, you see all the blocks in the environment fit together, and where they don't fit, you fix, And then the other side, when you have leadership, they see all the numbers of turnover and finances and stuff, and they see an error, they see a loss, and they fix. I look around in an environment and I see leaders that I see who are managing great. And I met somebody yesterday who's a great leader, but he's not always like a persona non grata sometimes because he's very direct. And sometimes he's very direct because he has a reason for it. And he gets stuff done. And some people understand and other people don't. And then he comes to me and he asks, what am I doing wrong? And I say, you're not doing anything wrong. You're just taking on a lot of personality that other people are not used to. Try to, change your perspective and step into their shoes and have the conversations from their point of view in your head before you actually talk to them. Yeah. And I give them these kind of that's how I fix what I see.
But don't lose yourself in the process.
Yeah.
That's right. So what's the difference between, so there's 4 trauma responses. There's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. What's the difference between fawning to try to appease someone else and their insecurity versus being a great leader? That's because, we can talk leadership all day. There's 6 leadership styles. And again, there's a lot of different modalities of leadership. So the 6 that I use are, you've got transactional leader, you've got servant leader, you've got dictator, assertive leader. You've got, so I playfully joke on our team, we have a 23-person team. We've got 3 chief officers, me, Kevin, and Christina. And I call us the 3 cowards. Because no one ever wants to be the bad guy, Mm-hmm, so I'm bad cop. It sucks. Okay. It really kind of sucks. But it is what it is, right? There has to be someone who's like, listen, if we keep this up, we're going to go out of business. So, So anyways, so there's servant leader, there's participatory leader, there's transactional leader, there's assertive leader, there's transformational leader, and there's one more, delegative leader. Kevin is more participatory, transactional, and servant leader. Christina's all servant leader. She just does things for everyone, does everything for everyone. She's amazing. And for me, I'm trying really hard to be a transformational leader. And the only way to be a transformational leader is to deploy the proper leadership style with the proper person at the proper time, in the proper amount. Like, so the whole Aristotle thing of, well, do the right thing. Thank you so much for that breakthrough insight. Who can do the right thing at the right time, in the right way, for the right reason, with the right people, in the right amount? And the truth is, right? What does that even mean? Optimal. Mm-hmm. Optimal is what you're going for. And optimal changes based on context, based on circumstances, based on the individuals, based on the goal. It's like, how do you even know you're effective? What does that even mean? If you're not reverse engineering a goal, you don't know if something's effective or not, right? So yeah, these things are it's very challenging people always say, well, how did you guys do it? And it's so hard to answer that question because it's the analogy you can use is chess. How did you get good at chess? You just lost at chess more than everyone else and then refigured out why you lost and then played better next time. And then you elevated who you played over time. If you want to be better at chess, you can't just play beginners, but you can't only play grandmasters either. So you kind of have to incrementally level up over time. And a lot of that is emotional because deep down, if you feel not good enough, you're most likely going to quit early. If you feel like you're amazing, you're not going to have the humility to learn. And so we're all kind of on these pendulums and we have to figure out where we're at. And it really is. I get it. I do. Most people don't achieve their goals and dreams. Most people are not fulfilled. Most people do end up divorced. Most people do end up failing in business. I understand why. I do. It's really complex. And it's simple. Everything's a duality. You have to make life simple. There's 5.33 billion people on the internet. That's increasing every day. We just surpassed 8 billion human beings on the planet. There's 195 countries. There's 3.3 million podcasts, even though most of them aren't even in progress. I get it. I do. And there's so much information out there. You say, well, you find the answer. Yeah, but how long did it take to find the right answer? And by the way, there's 130 million books. Most of them are garbage, in my opinion. They're just inaccurate. We all reason by metaphor, simile, and analogy when you got to go to first principles. And first principles are boring, super boring. I don't talk about people, places, and things. That's what everyone wants to talk about because there's all the drama. I just want to talk about ideas all the time. I have my 5 favorite books. I was telling a client yesterday. I said, these books aren't my favorite because of the author. Some of these authors I don't even like. I just love the ideas. The ideas are really powerful. And so, but ideas are boring, right? Ideas are boring. So I get it. And so even Kevin and I, we have to sort of entertain while we inject ideas. Ultimately, the boring stuff is the most valuable. Remember that. If I can give you one thing on this episode, the most boring stuff is by far the most valuable.
Oh, I I don't know. Yeah, no, not 100%, 200 or 300% agree. This is double, triple. It's the same thing with compounding. It's
Yep.
yeah, I'm gonna use the F word. So fucking boring, and it is something that nobody likes, but you have to do it to move forward.
Yep.
I've been looking at, so I'm pretty open on what I do with my podcast. So this is my go-to marketing tool, to show who I am and what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things is that at the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do solos. No, I don't know what I need to talk about, So all these things go through your mind and I'm going to produce. And then I started talking to people. Okay, who's going to be the person that I'm going to talk to? Oh, I need to talk to CEOs because they are my target audience. And I love working with that level of people, high achievers, because basically and really simply because they know how to take action.
Yeah.
They have proven that they take action, like yourself. And then you go on and on and on. And then at some point, I'm like, how many episodes do I need to hit to be, out there? And then suddenly I start reading up on how the podcasting world is evolving and how it is. And then, we met on Podmatch. So reading they have this wonderful monthly or quarterly report that they make.
Podmatch is
something
awesome.
like that.
Yeah.
And one of the things they're in there is like only X amount of podcasts go past episode 21.
Yep.
I'm like, that should be easy. It's not, by the way, but anyway, it's the first 10 are like,
podcasting.
You find a couple of people. Yeah.
Everything's harder than you think.
Every time you go further, it's harder. But you learn every time. And that's the compounding effect, because you have to, like you said, how can you become better at chess is by doing it. Not winning. Actually, losing is the better way. And failing is the better way. Now, there's one little caveat there. If you lose a lot, you lose your business. So don't go the extreme side of losing all the time. But
I almost did. Kev and I argue. He's like, brother, some people need more W's. They can't just fail forward forever. I say that's fair. Because if you have low self-belief, you actually need to win. Yeah, you need quick wins. So a lot of people who have high self-belief, they can just fail until they succeed. I would put myself in that category. But some people fail 3 times in a row and say, this isn't for me. And the truth is, maybe it's not, right? Not everyone's going to be LeBron James. But the truth is, you might just need to stick with it longer.
Yeah.
Nothing's supposed to come easy. I don't feel like. Even now, here's the thing, right? I'll share this. I was coaching a man. I went to college with him. He lived in the apartment downstairs from me at big tech school. Not big tech school. It's a famous tech school, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's an engineering school. The undergrad engineering programs there are unreal. I mean, it was so difficult. It was so difficult. So one of the hardest things I've ever done, quite frankly. It's kind of like a mini MIT is the best way to think of it. And we got together years later, and I knew him in college, so he knew a very different version of me. But he came to one of my, not seminars, we do Next Level Live. It's a live event we do every year for our company, and he came to one of them, and I ended up coaching him because he was starting a business, and he spent a lot of time in pharmaceutical, and he wanted to create an app to help with clinical trials. It was really quite awesome. And I had this really visceral moment that was super hard for me. He said, Alan, ever since college, you've always been a really good communicator. And first of all, I think to engineers, I used to think I was a really strong communicator. Now I realize I'm a really strong communicator to other engineers. And I think I've gotten a lot better with emotionally driven people, although that's been painfully challenging for me. But he thinks I'm an amazing communicator. And quite frankly, compared to him, I'm really good. Genuinely. And I had this really visceral moment because he has this great idea. He's going to start this company. And he can win. He knows how to create the app. He knows the industry. He knows what the industry is missing, and he knows how to do this clinical trial stuff. And I had this moment of, you need to partner with someone like me very quickly. Because he was going to these conferences and he was going to pitch his idea for investors. And I had this moment of, you just don't speak powerfully enough yet to actually get someone on board. And you're not going to succeed without effective communication. And so I created this framework called the 25 impact points of effective communication. It's actually hilarious because I gave a training on it once and only I could bomb a speech on effective communication. Kev was there. It was brutal. It was brutal. I thought they were going to be interested. They weren't. It was a group of teachers, but whatever. Doesn't matter. The point is that I had this real visceral moment of you have to find your strength zone. Genius zone, strength zone, whatever it is. You have to figure out what you're good at, right? So for me, bodybuilding, I adore, but I'm not good at it. I don't build muscle quickly. Kevin is, he jokes, he calls himself a meatball. He's short and he's jacked and he builds muscle way quicker than I do. I'm an ectomorph, half legs. I'm going to always crush him in running. He's always going to beat me in bodybuilding. So that's okay. But it's this weird thing where you have to find your strength zone. And when you do, it will feel easier in comparison to the things that are hard. But you also have to know that when you're in your strength zone, you're also competing against the top 1% who are all in their strength zone too. When you get to the NBA, it's not easier.
No, it's not.
It's actually harder. And I think the world's biggest lie, in my honest opinion, unless you're full of it and completely smoke and mirrors and lying through your teeth, which some people are, by the way, the biggest lie is that success makes life easier. I do not agree with that at all. I think it makes certain things easier. Mm-hmm. But overall, I have a 23-person team now. We are way more successful than we were in the beginning. And I'm telling you right now, my life is not easier. It's 4th of July weekend this weekend, and I'm trying to figure out how the hell I'm going to go to the lake for the weekend and not work the whole time. And so this whole CEO entrepreneur thing that has gotten really maybe sexy in the 21st century, it's really, really important to check in with self again and ask yourself, like, if you need certainty, you should not be an entrepreneur. You shouldn't. The amount of uncertainty that you have to handle on a daily basis, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, is wild. Unless you're going to lie through your teeth and sell a course, quick, easy steps to get fit, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people are doing that, right? So, and then, by the way, they show them on their yacht that they bought with the course that they, grinded for a decade behind the scenes and then did the quick 3 steps for you to do it too. Like that kind of stuff, hoodwinking people, that is a thing. Basically what they're doing there is leveraging status and perception and envy to sell things that don't really work to people that they created in 10 years. They try to convince you can do it in 3 months, which is just wrong. It's not real. A lot of that is just smoke and mirrors, and you'll learn that the hard way if you buy these $10,000 courses.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work for me. Oh, well, you didn't work hard enough. Well, the truth is, yeah, the truth is, I don't care how many life hacks you have, you're not going to have ripped 8-pack abs and run a marathon without consistently exercising, right? So for a decade. So at the end of the day, everything's harder than you think. Everything. Podcasting. Kevin and I, we've done 1,700 episodes, and you know that. When we say that to other people who aren't podcasters, it's nothing. There's no reaction. There's no, oh, cool. Like, what does that even mean? When I say it to a podcaster, they go, "You did what?"
That was my first reaction with Kevin as well.
and then they're like, "Well, what are they all shorts? Like 3 minutes?" No. Mm-hmm. Our average is 25 minutes per episode. They're like, "Are you what? You do one a day?" See, that you don't understand what these things are until you've experienced them. Most people don't. I was talking to someone at Netflix and Disney recently, and they having me on their show, and they're great. I'm a big fan, because usually people like that I struggle with because they have huge egos. They didn't have egos at all. It was great. But people don't understand the difficulty of that, but they also think it's more than it is. So like if you've never, so my roommate works at Apple, my roommate in college, blah, blah, blah. There's some people who think people who work at Apple are way smarter than they really are. And then there's other people who think working at Apple is no problem and it means nothing. And all of us are just inaccurate. Mm-hmm. Just because I work at Apple does not mean I'm a genius. Seriously. Whoa. Okay. Yeah. But it does mean something, right? And so I think accurate thinking is the only way any of us can make effective choices. And unfortunately, you only think accurately when you're a constant student, which requires you to lower your status in the short term in order to build something real in the long term.
Yeah, I see where this comes from and where it's going, because I'm trying to describe what I want to relate it to, but this is textbook CEO disease. I don't know if you know the terminology of CEO disease, which is a leader who is either high in ego, thinks he knows everything, doesn't ask any questions, defines strategy, but does not look at where the company is or what the possibilities are. It just does whatever he wants, big ego and stuff like that. That's one part of CEO disease. And the other part is, for instance, the guy with the veil, where he gets information that is really ticked off to the point where everything is nice green and nothing of the actual issues comes up towards him. And he doesn't ask any questions about it because he takes it as face value. In this case, veil value. And then there's a couple of other ones. But it's something that apparently a lot of CEOs struggle with, because they've gone through the ranks and they come to a point where they're going to say, I have now got the power to do something about it, while they do not. Because everybody thinks like a CEO is, you're a CEO as well. You probably have to answer to a lot of people before you take a decision.
Always.
And that's where, the image there is, this is the top guy who decides everything, where I'm like, sorry, I'm going to break this image completely. Yeah. This is not the top guy. This is one of the other people that makes decisions. It's not the top guy. Even when you come down to a founder, that's a completely different story. I call it founderitis, which is also a disease.
Nice.
I'm not giving a very positive theory, but anyway.
No, that's okay.
Giving the extremes. I'm talking really about the extremes. Where founderitis is something where a founder comes to a point where the company, and you're saying the 23 size team, when you come to a point as a founder, you cannot let go of the things that you used to do.
Yeah. That's hard. That's hard.
Still pulling the strings and taking the decision.
So I've had to overcome both of those.
That's amazing.
I'm
really,
a founder.
Congratulations if you did.
Thank you. It's been really hard. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I still have to consistently, though. That's the thing, is the humility piece, I think, is the most important character trait for any leader. Yeah, humility, not self-deprecating, not honesty.
No. Just
not fake humility
2
externally.
ears, 1 mouth.
Yeah, exactly. Continue with what you were saying, though. But I've never heard those. Mm-hmm. But the CEO, I'm driving with my ego. I'm going to make decisions even though I don't really know the data. Or I'm not getting the real data because everyone's secretly afraid of me.
Yeah.
Right. And then the founderitis, which is, I need to do this myself because that's where we started, versus the realization that you're actually the bottleneck to the company because your calendar can't stretch anymore.
Yeah, indeed. I'm going to try to write a book about it, give up the symptoms and make it a little bit clearer for a lot of people, because all these two roles and when it comes down to entrepreneurship, you end up somewhere between these two. It's kind of, an entrepreneur can go either way,
Yeah.
But these two persons are the ones that are not feeling fulfilled because they've struggled the whole time with the environment. And people don't listen to them. That's their point of view. They don't listen to them. They don't take the actions they want. They feel alone, and all of that chisel. And then I was thinking where I was going with this. That's not good.
No, but okay. I appreciate you owning it.
Yeah, well, it's something that I wanted to go towards, but I think what you mentioned earlier on all these balances that you have to find between how not humiliated, but humiliated. Help me here.
Yeah, humility.
Humble.
Is that what?
Thank you.
Humble.
Humility. Yeah, humble. Wow, I could not find the word. This is going to be a very nice piece of the podcast.
We're not perfect here. It's all good.
Yeah, well, that's the story. So the humbleness, but don't become the lamb of the herd. You have to be kind of a wolf in sheep's skin, but also a sheep in wolf skin. It's kind of the two, where you end up in those two stories, and then you listen to everybody. And that's one of the first thing I try to make clear. And I do not say this literally to my clients. They're probably going to hear it right now, but you really, like I said earlier, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use these two more than that one, because that's the power. And another power, and it is the power of silence. And now everybody's looking at their mobiles, saying, "Is this off? Is something going on?" No, the power of silence. You heard this. You did not hear anything, but the power of silence can change an environment completely. The energy can shift so hard in a boardroom, in a conversation, wherever. I love to use those two things. Listen more than you talk, and pure silence. And that's where I find the balance of, am I dominating, or am I being submissive? Because with the silence, you're dominating. It's kind of contradictory, but you're dominating because you're not saying anything anymore. You're really actually saying, okay, we landed. Now let's go forward.
This gets very complex in leadership, though, because dominating on the micro or in the macro?
This is macro, I think, more. Yes.
The thing is the person who's listening and learning is always winning in the long term. But it's the person who's talking who is perceived in the short term as the leader. And that's all unconscious. I think a lot of leadership is unconscious. So, for example, what's a good example of this? When you watch a TV show and you resonate with a character, you start saying things they say, you start mimicking and mirroring them. So House MD is one of my favorite shows ever of all time. But House, he can be a real asshole. And I agree with his rationality. He's hyper focused on rational thought. He doesn't like irrationality. And the show is magnificent. The character development, I mean, those writers are geniuses, seriously. But I have to be careful watching that show too much, because I'll become more of a dictator leader rather than a transformational leader. Yeah. And so the question here becomes, and you mentioned the two things, CEO-itis and founder-itis. And all these, I feel alone, people don't listen to me, all that stuff. The hard truth is, you're just a poor leader. And it's a duality, though. So Christina, Kevin, and I, this was really hard for me. And this is I'm one of my deepest fears is sounding arrogant, but I think I'm more afraid to not be truthful. I want to be authentic and transparent more than I'm afraid to be arrogant or seen as arrogant. I don't actually think I'm arrogant. It's a weird thing, but I'm often seen as arrogant. The truth is that I'm a stronger leader than Kevin and Christina. Now, what does that even mean? Okay. I've tried to throw, and you guys know Kev because Kev was the last episode, and maybe you have reference to Kev. Kev is much better than me at a lot of things. He's warmer. He's way more relatable. He's much more likable. He's more empathetic. He's good at vulnerability. He is energetically safe. He's a psychologically safe space for people. He's not super intimidating. He's a down-to-earth, awesome human being. Now, I am a lot of those things, but that's not what jumps off the page about me. Mm-hmm. So Kevin and I both give a speech. He's afraid he's not going to add value. I'm afraid everyone's going to hate me. I'm certain I'll add value. We're going to be fine. I'll get you thinking differently. I'll get you going. But you're going to probably hate me. Not you, but like if you said, Alan, you have to give a speech in front of 1,000 people and you have to add value, I'd be like, yes, I'm your guy. Let's do it. If you said they all have to like you, I would say that is literally impossible. That feels impossible to me.
You got one here.
Yeah, awesome. I got one. Nice. Good start. So is it an audience of engineers? No. So Kev, if you said you got to give it a speech, you got to get them laughing and you got to get them to resonate and like you, he'd be like, oh, no problem. But if you gave him a speak into the lives of 1,000 CEOs, and you said you have to help them improve their business, he would be like, no effing chance. No way, not my audience. So we have different fears, and we're cowards in different ways. I'll say cowardly in different ways. So for me, I am concerned about sounding arrogant. I'm concerned to hurt people's feelings. I'm very easily unlikable. I'm not easily relatable. I don't struggle with self-doubt a ton, and people do know that. You can sense it. Kev is super relatable, super likable. So we found over these years and years and years working together, I'm kind of jealous of how everyone loves Kev, and he's kind of jealous about how I'm always seen as the guy who like has the answers. And obviously there's nuances in between, but for everyone out there listening, to bring this to you, the truth is, if you feel alone and you feel like you're struggling and you feel unfulfilled and you feel like no one's listening to you and all that kind of stuff, you might just not be a very strong leader. And the truth is, you might have to lead by not leading. You might have to own it. Just own it. Kev and I have had to own who we are. I wanted him to be the guy. He wanted to be the guy. He was afraid not to be the guy. I was afraid to be the guy. Because his wife, Taryn, she's been with us for 6 years now. They met 6 years ago. And she's like, well, why is he CEO? Not from a tacky place, but from an actual curious place. And Kev said, he's the CEO. He is. It's who he is. He's the structure, discipline, visionary, self-belief, metrics guy. And Kev trying to be like me and me trying to be like Kev just didn't work. It didn't work. Now, it doesn't mean we can't be well-rounded.
No,
if what you wanted
that's not the point. Yeah.
That's not the point. I still need to learn from Kev. I still need to,
Yeah, it works both ways.
Yeah, I have to. I'm sharp around the edges. I have to work on myself. You can't. But here's the difference. If you're a natural born leader, you know it because you're scared of it. It is our greatness, not our darkness, that most frightens us. If that quote resonates, you are afraid of success. You're not afraid of failure. I'm not afraid of failure. Not at all. That's so triggering for someone who's afraid of failure, by the way. Okay, I'm sorry if I triggered anyone. You might be afraid of failure. I get it, honestly. I'm not afraid of failure. I'm afraid of shining. Now, here's why. When you shine and you trigger everyone else's insecurities, they lash out. So a lot of us have these two different core wounds. One of them is defective, which means you feel not good enough, you feel not smart enough, you feel not capable enough. I don't have that very much. I think we all have both, but a much smaller percentage of me has that. Okay, so maybe 1% of me has that. Probably not even, to be honest. Okay, the other one is I'm unlovable. I'm unlikable. Who I am is too much for people. My intensity is going to trigger everybody. Who I am and what I am is going to trigger everyone else's insecurities. So here's the problem. The unlovables who are super competent, who behind the scenes are rock stars, who believe in themselves a ton, in social situations, they're very low self-worth and they trigger everyone. But the defectives trigger the unlovables because they're so insecure that we can't be honest with you and just say, hey, you kind of suck as a leader. Honestly, what if it's true? What if you're just not a strong leader? You need to know that so that you don't try to be CEO and fail forever. It's very important that everyone understands your strengths and weaknesses. Yes, you can mitigate your weaknesses, but if you build a career on something you're weak at, you are in so much trouble. You're not going to be fulfilled. You're certainly not going to be successful. You're going to think something's wrong with you or the world for the rest of your life. Christina's a massive, amazing, she's the best support player in the game. She's the most supportive team member on planet Earth. She's on the bench ready for any time anyone's injured. That is who she is. She'll do more for others than she'll ever do for herself, and that's great. But as a CEO, she would be in serious trouble because she'd end up a martyr. She'd burn herself to the ground and the company to the ground trying to save everybody. And I've almost done that too. And Kev is really good with starting things. He has started most of the departments in our company, but he cannot scale it. He can't sustain it and scale it to save his damn life. That dude will run a system every day and he will never improve it. At our company have been me being like, Kev, poke this button. I basically have to poke him and say, dude, like, that's branding from 3 years ago. Can you update your profile picture, please? And so we're all supposed to be ourselves. And unfortunately, the most courageous thing you can do is to own your weaknesses, own your strengths, own all of what you are, because every weakness has a strength and every strength has a weakness. And you're just deeply insecure about who you really are. Half of us don't even want to share what our favorite movie is because we were made fun of when we did. My favorite movie is The Lion King. You think I'm not afraid to share that? You know how many dudes are like,
Good
The
movie.
Lion King? Great movie. Thank you.
It's a
The
great
Lion
movie.
King, really? So we in high school, we all got picked on anytime we showed even a fraction of who we really are. And I think
I'm a Back to the Future guy.
You're back. Okay, nice. All right. Okay, cool. So if I disagree, now I lash out. It's this whole thing. The point is, we've all been bullied. We've all been ridiculed for who we really are. And it's when it's who we really are, we're so afraid. Like, Kev's afraid to be found out. Like, he was working at a gas station, didn't go to college. You know, he was not seen as intelligent or reputable. He didn't have a resume cover letter. He struggles. He was on a podcast with a NASA doctor. This is a space doctor. And he told me about it. He's like, dude, I struggled so much. I was interviewed by someone who was a doctor in space, and I didn't even go to college. And I'm sitting there going, that's awesome, man. I'm proud of you. But I'm sitting there going, I would be interviewed by that, no problem. As arrogant as that sounds, I might even be afraid to trigger that doctor by my self-belief. And so, again, some of us good at success, not great at relationships. Other people, and those are the unlovables of the world, you feel unlovable or unlikable. And then other people, not good at success, not super competent, things don't come naturally to you in terms of achievement, but you're really good with people and you're relatable and likable and vulnerable and empathetic. And we all have to work on both, but really own who we are. And that's a hell of a duality.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I don't know where you get the idea that you're unlikable, honestly. This has been an amazing conversation. I think we could go on for hours on all these topics because we resonate on so many things. And I want to add one thing that I really wanted to tell you, and that is out of the conversation from Kevin and his story. I want to thank you for what you did for that guy. You know, the night he was in that motel room, you talked to him and you broke through to his dark side to make the light shine again. And that's amazing. I want to thank you for that. And it's completely contradictory to what you're saying about being a purely engineering minded person, where that might be something that might scare some people or might give them an idea of, no, I'm not going to talk to that guy. It gives a clear view of how your way of being can help somebody who is in a desperate place. And that is more than worth just my gratitude. That's just more and more worth than that. And it's something that I have noticed, that you need to find people that contradict everything that you feel that you want to have. You need I love looking at it as dark side and light side, because you need the dark side to understand what the light can bring you. And one of the things that I've heard, and I love that quote, is you light a candle in the darkness and the light will shine brightly. The darkness will go away. And I think that's something that you did for him. So I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank you, Alan, for bringing us all this wisdom from your point of view. You guys balance out each other so beautifully. I'm gonna kind of switch in my scheduling, and I'm gonna put you guys not too far apart, because I think it's very interesting to see how I talk to Kevin and talk to you on all these topics, because it's so amazing. And now I get it, how you guys got to 1,700 episodes. Really, it's not only tenacity and grit and all that beautiful entrepreneur stuff or leadership stuff. No, this is just a combination of you two guys, and then the added third amazing person that I haven't spoken to yet. Maybe not yet. I don't know.
Christina,
indeed.
Yeah, she said to me recently, she said, I know one day I'm going to have to go on these shows and I don't want to. So it's funny how it happens not long after that. But talk about empowered female minority. She's Filipino. She is awesome, and she's the obvious choice. And you want to know why? When we had someone move on who was the previous COO, she was the obvious next. I mean, obvious to me. It's like, yeah, Christina, hands down. And Kev was like, yep, green light, let's go. And she was like, honestly, I don't know if I'm qualified. That's why it needs to be you.
Yeah.
That's exactly why. Because if you came in like the other person saying I'm the obvious choice and all that, you don't have the humility to last. And so she's been the best decision. I mean, that has been the best decision. And so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me share my perspective. Thank you for thanking me about the Kev stuff. And the truth be told is the common wound that we both share of not having dads and really wanting to do this whole male role model thing differently, I think has been a through line throughout that we didn't realize maybe it started out as some trauma bonding, right? And it's become so much more than that. And so it's been awesome, and I'm really grateful. And it's been challenging in ways I couldn't have anticipated. And I think the success side and the overwhelm of the logistics is hardest for him. For me, it's the heart stuff that's always been the hardest. But we've definitely both benefited tremendously from each other's strengths and weaknesses, and from being the last thing I'll share with everybody. I'm big on frameworks, and the engineering mind always has triads and pyramids and all stuff. But my mental framework that I think will change everyone's life is a simple triad. I call it the triad of transformation. And I use the analogy. I took a fire protection course back in my engineering school, and you need oxygen, heat, and fuel to create fire. And I think fire is a great metaphor for transformation. Phoenix burned down, rise anew. And so humility, courage, and vulnerability. I think humility, courage, and vulnerability is the triad of transformation. I don't think real transformation can happen without those three. Even you mentioning some of the challenges that your wife went through with her dark time and you being there for her, I know that she rose anew from that. And a lot of these CEOs and people that are really successful, millionaires, billionaires that I've met, mentors, coaches, I've had dozens, some of them are successful through smoke and mirrors and not real courage, humility, and vulnerability. Like why is it that you are so 10 out of 10 confident, but yet you've never exercised? Why is it that you are so 10 out of 10 confident, but yet your wife divorced you because you seem to never listen to her at all? You want to know the truth about a great leader? Ask their wife or their husband. Me saying I'm great means nothing. Kevin saying it, Emilia saying it, the closest people to me, my team has 23 people, and the majority of them are amazing women. Like, there's no way they would be on my team if I was toxic. And so I look at stuff like that because it's easy to smoke and mirrors and show up on a podcast and be buttoned up. But I think intuitively people can tell when you're a good, virtuous person who wants to see positive impact in leadership versus manipulative. And so my goal is to be the male role model, the best male role model I can. And I'm only 35 and I got a lot to learn, and it's been brutal, quite frankly, but it's been super meaningful, and it's been very fulfilling. I'm very fulfilled. My life's really hard, but it's really fulfilling, and I hope that for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Wow. Again, absolutely, Alan. This is amazing stuff, and I hope that the listeners really find that a couple of triggers in what you were saying to them in our conversation. So thank you again very much. I think we went a little bit over time on our schedule here.
That was my alarm. I think I'm in trouble. Hold on. I think I gotta go.
Yeah. But I think it's well worth it to have this conversation with you. And I would love to invite you in the future again when the time arises on the show. So I also want to thank the listeners to, again, listen to our podcast and remind you to jump from head to heart and feel the beat within. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Everlasting Podcast. Let me leave you with a few questions to answer in the comments. How do you see the different topics we discussed during this interview? What are your thoughts? What stood out for you? Let us know in the comments or just send us your feedback. We launch new episodes weekly. Don't miss any by ensuring you are subscribed to the show. Click the follow button now. We depend on the organic growth of the podcast to inspire more and more people. So by giving us a 5-star review and sharing this episode with at least one of your friends who might be interested in the subject, you will significantly help more people become inspired. But more than anything, I am grateful to you for taking the time to listen to the show. If you are also a successful CEO, founder, or entrepreneur who has inspiring words to say, feel free to contact us for an interview at contact@nicovandevenne.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you again soon with more inspirational conversations on achieving everlasting fulfillment.